Welcome to Health Hacks.
Hey Peter, how are you?
I'm doing good, my dear. Nice to be with you. Or not with you, as the case may be.
Yeah, we have to do this one remotely, but it's actually so nice that we two connected. I feel like we have a similar outlook on life, and we're both two happy, positive mindset people.
Yeah.
Let's get right into it. So what I want to talk with you today is you are known as the mind architect. Maybe you want to explain what exactly does that mean? Because I think it's so brilliant.
Well, thank you. It was definitely a unique moniker that I came up with. I felt that all the other titles that were out there that are associated with people helping souls sort of become liberated were a little contaminated, like spiritual teacher or guru. And I realized that when I was young, I always loved architecture. I loved sort of the precision and detail of like creating spaces. And I realized the most valuable space for any human being is between our ears, right, in our mind. And so, hence the mind architect was born, where I sort of helped to redesign and improve people's thinking space, because for me, that's the precursor to everything that we experience. So far the title works and people seem to love it. So I'll stick with it for now.
Yeah, right. Like it is basically you architect, we architect our homes, but where is it the space that we actually live in? Well, It is our mind, right?
Yeah.
So that is where we should actually put effort into architecture, right? And creating a really nice home to live in, which is our mindset.
Yeah. No matter where we go, no matter what kind of structure we're in, whether it's a beautiful mansion or a castle somewhere, or it's like a small little apartment, which we've all lived in at some point, ultimately the consistent 24/7 space that we occupy is our thoughts and our inner space. So for me, if we can make that pristine and beautiful and inviting and comfortable and inspiring, then it doesn't really where you are in the outside world.
Exactly. I think a lot of people start focusing there on their health and their body, which is very, very important, obviously. But if you want to go one step deeper, that is your mind.
Yeah.
And that is where you're focusing on. And I think that is just so amazing. And
Thank you.
It's an honor to have you here today.
Well, I appreciate it. Yeah.
So, you know what I really would love to talk with you about is a lot of people in, especially today's society, blame circumstances for their maybe current unhappiness, or like they would say, once I get that job, I'm going to be happy. Or once I move to another country, then I'm going to start my life and I'm going to be happy. But like we're constantly blaming circumstances in order for not being 100% happy, or kind of like, how happiness is a state of mind, right? And I feel like you would have the right words to talk to people out there who would like constantly think, there is something in my daily life that like kind of holds me back in order to have this happy or being a happy person.
Yeah, no, 100%. It's very seductive life, right? And we're all tempted by different things. And I have nothing but compassion, because honestly, some people's circumstances truly are devastating and very confronting and really tragic and very difficult. And I think it's important to acknowledge that too, right? I know for myself, parents dying when I was young and didn't come from a lot of money. And so I could equally resonate with somebody who says, well, my circumstances are why I'm unhappy, because at that time I felt like, well, what's the point of living, right? I'm by myself. And so I have nothing but compassion, because I've been there and circumstances have been far from desirable. But to your point, it's not the source of our experience. It could be the contributing factor. Like, I think to completely negate our circumstances, it equally isn't fair. Like, there's a lot of people who might be very spiritual and they're like, oh, your circumstances have nothing to do with anything. And whilst there's a component of truth to that, I do feel circumstances contribute to our experience. Like, obviously, if you're sitting in a very cold or a very hot environment, biologically, it could be discomforting, let alone if you're in a space where you're, raising a family and you're worried about your mortgage or your rent because you just got laid off from work. These are real life circumstances, and I do want to acknowledge those. But if you're really tapping into the power of what it means to be a human being who is at the source of their own experience, meaning we're the author of how we relate to life, then that is the next level of evolution, to go, okay, my circumstances might not be ideal, but it's still incumbent upon me to decide how I relate to them. I can either be a victim of circumstance or I can be the victor or author of them, right? And so for me, it's sort of a little bit of an on-off switch. You're either one or the other. You're either fully responsible or you're going to be at the effect of life. And I get it. I've been there, but that's tiresome and it's sad and people are exhausted, because then if you think that the way you feel is because of your circumstances, then it's only natural that you're always going to try and control your circumstances, right? Because we want to feel good. So if we think, well, I feel the way I feel because of what's out there and I want to feel good, so then I have to control what's out there. And that's why most people are pretty exhausted. So I think it's nice to acknowledge that circumstances can be very challenging, but as part of, your and I's sort of passion and commitment to spiritual evolution and growth, then we eventually want to realize, oh, hang on a minute, the way I feel isn't because of the circumstances, but because of the way I'm relating to them. And that gives at least people some sort of sense of empowerment.
I think it's also a lot of like the kind of like past experiences that we had that we create fears in our brain that haven't happened yet. Those are like future fears based on what happened in the past. And we're basically, like being scared of our own thoughts, our own imagination. And there's like, we would say that those are like maybe the circumstances or whatever, but what's really happening here is your own mind.
Yes.
It isn't even the reality because it hasn't happened yet. And we would, if you go a little bit deeper into it, like with these thoughts, like we could create something that is, that could eventually then even happen. So staying on the positive mindset, even if you go through difficult times, is so essential. I think that's exactly where your work comes in. I guess a lot of your clients come to you with having pretty dramatic and hard circumstances, but you are there helping them to see the bright light while they go through dark times. Yeah,
100%. And again, I think it's both. I think, compassion for the fact that even some listeners right now, they might feel like, well, hang on a minute, if you just knew what I'm going through, it's not so easy, and I get it. But ultimately, to your point, everything is really a reflection of our history. It's a very thought-provoking and sometimes a bit profound understanding and distinction that I teach, but most people aren't creating a future, they're remembering one. And what that means is, because if you're completely at peace with your history, then the future and the way that we step into it does have nothing but pure possibility. But because we're wired to survive, right? The brain's actual imperative is to predict and protect, because as organisms, our primordial imperative is we want to make it, we want to survive, right? And so what happens is the brain goes through all of the trials and tribulations that we all go through as we grow up. Whether you had a traumatic childhood or not, you're still going to have these mechanisms where you're trying to survive. So then what the brain does, it remembers things that weren't great or things that were scary or things that didn't work out. And then it's like trying to avoid those happening again. So that's the fear, right? Fictitious events appearing real as a good acronym for fear, where the brain is taking its memory and it's going, okay, well, that didn't work, that sucked, that hurt, I'm going to try and avoid that. So actually, even though the future's got nothing in it, the brain, because it's wired again to protect us, it's doing its job, it remembers things that didn't go well or even that went well, and we try to replicate them, right? It's like, oh, I want to do that again. But in fact, what we're doing then is dragging our history around with us. And so that's where most people get stuck, unbeknownst to themselves, in this sort of Groundhog Day energetically, when in fact, what I'm helping people recognize is, one of my quotes, I write quotes and I say, what happened and couldn't have happened any other way because it didn't. And that's a way for people, people to be able to really accept their history, right? And it's like, it couldn't have been different because it wasn't. And if you really get that, then it starts to open up something new where it's like, oh, if I could really just look forward to, like it's when you go to meet someone or someone's going to a dinner party or they've got a date with someone, they're like, oh, I'm looking forward to seeing you, right? So that sense of possibility that gives a feeling of excitement is ironically the same coin, but it's the other side of fear, because they're both future-based. It's just fear is where the brain is anticipating something we don't want to happen. Excitement is where we're anticipating something that we do want to happen. I'm not saying either is great, because I like to live in the unknown, which is where we're open to all things happening, because that's pure possibility. But at least if we can, we want to shift away from fear and maybe a little bit more towards, the positive outlook. As you said, it can become self-fulfilling, right? If people keep living in fear, which I call dis-ease, the absence of ease, then eventually that will cascade into our physiology, and we do become even sick and get disease, right? That's how powerful the mind is, that it's that self-fulfilling prophecy. So that's why I at least like to give people the tools as best as I can to say, hey, okay, your circumstances might not be ideal, but they are a reflection of who you've been, right? Your history.
Yeah.
So if we can change who you've been, then it might not change your circumstances instantaneously. It can do. That's how powerful energy is in the quantum realm. If you really shift energetically, things can show up, like spontaneously, which is cool. But if you want to change your life, then the best way to do that is to change the way you look at life. And then you will think differently, feel differently, act differently, and then you get different results. So it's both esoteric and spiritual, but it's also very physical and formulaic when you really understand how we create anything in life.
Yeah, exactly. We are basically creating. But with that said, you would say like you are completely free, like a free mind when you say, I don't know.
Yes.
Because that gives you that's kind of like steps back from you creating a little bit and letting things happen.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
But like, would I want that? Because I'm thinking like, if somebody would ask me, Maren, aren't you afraid of your future? Right? A lot of people are afraid of future, of their house their career going to be family, whatever, right? Aren't you afraid that? I would say, no, I'm not. Because like the universe is always on my side. It's always working with me. I'm super positive. I'm excited. I'm happy. Yeah. I'm like, but would the right answer in order to be a free mindset be, I don't know? Because I would be like, I know it's going to be great. Because the universe, the life always wants you to be great. So, I feel like it's going to be great. What is the right way to approach?
I love that. I love that approach and that attitude. And obviously it speaks volumes about you as a spirit, you as a soul. It also reflects maybe, I know a little bit about your history, good family, you're a happy person, right? So you probably got a good, track record, a good bank of evidence that your life, even if it's difficult at times, or you go through, trials and tribulations and heartaches and disappointments, that you always come out on top, right? So you've got that evidence. A lot of people don't, right? And that's where the compassion comes in. So I think it's a combination of recognizing that the truth is we don't know. So even in your languaging, when you said, I know it's going to be great, I love that attitude, but you don't know, right? I could say that you believe, or that your intention is, or that you aspire to greatness, but to know is really in the faculty of the mind. And so when we can get out of the mind and really sort of tap into more the energetic feeling, like you, especially as a woman, women tend to be more intuitive, you could feel that things are going to work out. You might not know what that looks like. Things happen, like people get sick, or people pass, or relationships end, or jobs end, like stuff happens, right? So I think to have the undercurrent sense of, okay, I don't know what's going to happen, but because I know myself, I'll be able to handle it and things will work out. That's one component. It's a little bit more powerful, right? Because otherwise, if I know things are going to be great, or I have an anticipation or an expectation and that doesn't get fulfilled, that equally leads to suffering, right? I often say suffering is unfulfilled expectation. So if we don't have expectations, then we can't be upset because we didn't know what was going to happen.
Yeah.
The only difference is, which I, love about what you just shared and admire, is that we are co-creators in life, right? So just as we could live in a space of dis-ease or misery that will be self-fulfilling, right? Eventually things will fall apart. We will get sick. Our relationships will not work out. We can equally create an internal frequency of joy, of radiance, of possibility, of love, of freedom. And even though we might not know what that looks like, the events of our life will carry the signature that's associated with our energy, right? Meaning, I didn't know that so-and-so was going to offer me an opportunity to speak at a company, But that makes sense because I've been feeling very abundant, right? Or that might show up in somebody who comes up to me, stops me on the street and says, oh my gosh, your work really inspires me. Would you like to blah, 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 come and speak at this private YPO group or whatever? So we don't know the details, but what I do like in the way that you spoke is to understand where we can hold on to the resonance, right? Like what does the event feel like because of how I feel is the precursor to those circumstances starting to marry the same energy that I'm carrying, right? If I'm walking around in a state of dis-ease and misery and depression and woe is me, then I could get a good opportunity come my way, but there might be something I hear in it that will only reflect my, oh, well, this is too good to be true. I knew it wouldn't happen. Versus if I'm in a frequency that is much more to do with buoyancy and positivity and possibility, the same opportunity that may have some caveats or some limitations, but I'd still see the opportunity in it because that's the energy I'm carrying. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I feel like being people who have like you have expectations towards life or whatever expectations is something that also you create in your mind, right?
Yeah.
But if you're being disappointed by your own expectations of events, of your future, of your career, whatever it is, I think there is one very, very great look on it. Like there is, if your plan hasn't, like, for example, if the universe destroyed your plan, maybe it is because otherwise your plan would have destroyed you. Yeah. So I always believe that the universe is on your side.
100%.
Like life is on your side. Like, and if you view it that way, and if you know that in your heart, if you really know that, then even if you get disappointed, I would say, by your own expectations that you've created, like you still walk out happy. Does that make sense? Like, because you know that, like, for example, if a relationship didn't work out as you wished it would have worked out, you're like, if you view it from that perspective, then you understand, like, maybe that relationship would have destroyed me in the end of the day. Yeah. And the universe knew it. Yeah. It knew it because the universe wants you to be happy. The universe wants you to live a happy life. Yes. And if you walk around with this mindset, then no matter what, right? You're always going to smile. Absolutely. You're going to walk around the world and be like, it is how it is. Yes. And you accept the reality and take it to something positive. Yeah. And sometimes the most devastating things, or the things that seem to be so horrible in the moment, just might be your path leading to something that is just your way. That is where you're supposed to be. And that is what makes you stronger for the future, or view it however you want to view it, or whatever it is. But like, I'm sure there is nobody out there going without any struggles in life. No, it's of course, that's life. There's nobody. I think everybody is struggling at one point of their lives, some more, some less. Usually the struggle happens in our mind more, and then, and then the actual event, it is usually what's happening in our mind that we could like rate how much somebody struggles from events, right? Yeah. But like, it is the way that we would like view life in general. It's just, if you have a positive mindset and if you know the universe is on your side, it's going to change the way you live life eventually, right? 100%. It reminds me of that expression, sometimes not getting what you want is the greatest thing that could ever happen, right? Because I did a live event, as you know, I was speaking 2 nights ago here in LA, and do these monthly live events, which is so fun. And I was expressing to the crowd that no matter how high your intelligence or how great your imagination, whatever you as an individual think is possible is not what's possible, right? And if you really understand that, meaning however great our feeling of whatever we're able to create in our minds, it's still very limited in terms of what the universe can actually create for us, right? And so to your point, I often joked I'm a trust fund baby, not because I was left a penny by my parents, but because I trust in the universe. And that's, That's beautiful. I believe I'm a trust fund baby then too. Yes, I think you are. The universe trusts in me. That's great. Yeah, and vice versa. I love that saying. Yeah, so when even things to me subjectively, Peter Crone, don't seem to work out,
It's only based on my view, and my view is very limited compared to the intelligence of the universe. So that's where I think, you know, your attitude is right on point, which is like, okay, yes, we're going to get hurt. Yes, we're going to get disappointed. I know I've been through plenty of trials myself, and that's what allowed me to develop this patience and compassion for other human beings. But I know categorically for the last couple of decades where I haven't been in a space of woe, that even though things didn't always work out, they always worked out. You know, meaning it might not have been,
exactly.
It might not have been my personal preference, but it ended up being way better than I thought.
Exactly. And that is also where I come from, and taking my positive attitude, because like I feel like if you start a day, or like if you look at your day, maybe better look past at your day, you can point out the negative things that happened, or you could point out the positive things that happen, and determine on what you're going to point out. You're either going to go crying to bed, or you're going to go to bed with a big smile on your face. And it's literally your choice. And I know this sounds very simple, right? But like if you really take that serious, and if you learn how to really practice that, it's going to change your whole life. 100%. It is literally going to change your whole life. And I feel like I would get like, okay, well, that's easy said in your position or somebody, you know, but like, for example, you've went through a rough past, if I could say that like that. You've lost both of your parents. You were very young, and look at you. The most happiest person around, positive mindset. And I think nobody could hold that against you. Like, oh, well, but your upbringing was great. Both of your parents love you. And of course they do. But like, that was dramatizing. And just as much as that was, I think everybody has something dramatizing they went through. Everybody has their own struggles that they went through. And I feel like we're all out here trying to do our best and trying to be the best version of ourselves. It is just not that easy to just like what I just said, like just look at the positive things in life and be like, yeah, well, everybody heard that, right? I'm definitely not the first person to say that, but the good thing, like the hard thing, is to really practice that, to really put that into your daily life, to walk out with looking at the bright and positive things. And sometimes I wonder if I do that too much, because
maybe you might piss off a lot of people around you.
No, but like I would like just see the best in people also, with like completely ignoring the biggest red flags. It's like because I just focus on the positive thing, I don't really suffer afterwards from it, because I still don't see the red flags, you know, right? Time passes, everybody sees the red flags. I don't see them ever, because I only see sunshine and happy world. But like also exactly. But like jokes apart, I sometimes wonder, like sometimes it's good actually to get like an outside perspective from some of my friends who are not that positive, to point out some negative points on situations, on life circumstances, on job opportunities, or like saying like, well, Maren, have you looked at it that way? And I'll be like, oh yeah, there's something on it, right? It's not all crazy, but like, would you say there is something like that? Is there something bad about like being too positive?
I don't know if I'd say bad. I tend to get away from these dualistic terms, right? Positive, negative, good, bad, right, wrong. They all belong in this manifest world. And I like to really sort of go beneath that, right? To a level of just pure awareness, right? So I love that, okay, you tend to be defined by more positivity. You're conditioned to look at the good in people, which is beautiful. I don't know if it's bad, but yes, it seems as though so far you've done okay, but there might become, moments in life where we could call that naivety, right? Like, where maybe you're not so aware of the fact that life sometimes just delivers some pretty awful humans or people, and it's like as much as we want to believe in people, and I'm the same, like I really do want to believe at the deepest level that we are good beings, right? But we might have been conditioned through trauma in our childhood to be abusive or dominant or controlling or judgmental. And these conditions aren't nice to be around, especially if you're in a relationship. People do get gaslit and people do get abused and people do get harmed. That's a reality of life, right? And so I think as long as you're discerning, I love the word discernment, right? As long as you're discerning enough to be able to honor yourself, right? Like not to be so positive that you're denying your own value. Does that make sense? Like I've seen this in women who, like yourself, are loving and kind and they're upbeat, they take care of themselves. You know, so many times, unfortunately, I know it's a bit cliche, they tend to attract men who maybe don't necessarily honor that, but because they've got such a buffer for goodness and positivity, they compensate. And because they can. You know, I remember working actually with a client of mine many years ago in New York, and she was so loving, so kind. She was very successful. So she had all of her buckets filled. And she was dating, and it was just in a relationship where she wasn't being honored, she wasn't being valued, she wasn't being fully seen. And yet she compensated like many women do, because women are the nurturers and the care providers and the lovers. And most women fall into the trap of like, okay, if I could just love more, then, you know, he'll show up, right? And I said to her, just because you have this abundance of resources, I said, it's like you're walking around and you've got this cut on your heel and you're bleeding, but it's so slight that you don't notice it. But it's still a loss to you as a being, right? And so just because you can compensate doesn't mean you should. And so I think that's the only trap that people maybe who are super positive could fall into, is that sometimes they can sort of abandon themselves subtly, you know? It's never too bad, because if you're positive, then it, you know, you sort of put a spin on it anyway. But I would just say for someone like you know, like, I
you
don't
look
know.
back at it and you don't even see it.
No, because you're like, oh, well, I still learned from it. So whatever. Like it's, you know, you always put a spin on it.
It was my path, you know.
Exactly. Yeah. So I think either way, you're going to be fine. And again, we don't know each other that well, but from what I can read in your energy, yes, it's all going to work out no matter what. I would just say to be, you know, just not cautious, but discerning. Caution has an underlying tenet of fear, and I don't want anyone to live from fear, but just to be discerning, you know, to really understand one's values, to really understand what's important to somebody and recognize when those values aren't being met, you know.
Yeah,
and that's
exactly.
okay. And then it becomes trust, you know, where you can move on from a job, from a location, from a partnership, for, you know, whatever doesn't work you, without feeling loss or grief, you know, and go, okay, like this is an evolution. This is a stepping stone. And so that would be the only sort of subtle consideration I would have for people who are too positive, is sometimes it's a compensation that doesn't allow someone to really honor their own worth. But most times, sadly, people defer to the negative, like they look at the worst case scenario, as you said, which is both what happened, but also their projection of what might happen, which creates fear and anxiety. And that's the things that I love to help people overcome by, as you said earlier, stepping into that unknown and being open to all possibilities. The one thing I would just add to what you shared, you saying about you can look at, you know, your day as you go to bed as either the negative or the positive, and it's a choice. It definitely occurs like that. And I just want you to realize that it's not actually a choice. Choice is figurative and literal. So there's literal choice, but most choices that people do or don't make are based on conditioning, meaning we're programmed to think a certain way, right? So I just share that so people don't beat themselves up who are listening and go, oh, well, if it's a choice, why do I tend to lean to the negative? So it just gives people a little bit more, again, space to realize it's a choice when you realize it's a choice. But until then, you're being driven by your conditioning. Does that make sense? So if someone grew up in a family where maybe one of the parents was depressed or was an alcoholic or was always speaking negatively about neighbors and their spouse, then that child has learned some sort of programming that is much more based in negativity. So it's like, you know, you're from Germany, I think. So, you know, you learnt German because that was the environment you grew up in. Somebody who grew up in Madrid learned Spanish. So if somebody grew up in an environment where it's tending towards negativity and blame and accusation and judgment and criticism, they're going to learn that language. So that's why it's a little stronger. So my guess is you grew up in an environment with loving parents where there was more positivity, things worked out. So you're already a little bit pre-programmed to lean into the positive. So that's beautiful. That's beneficial. But it's also rare, as you know. Like for me, I was always a happy-go-lucky kid, even though my parents died. Obviously, that was a very tough, trying time for me. But my natural disposition was always to look at the good like you, to feel like things are going to work out, to trust in my own life and my own journey and my own karma. But I do want to acknowledge that most people aren't, unfortunately, wired that way. So it does take a little bit of effort to break out of these subconscious patterns of I'm not loved, I'm not good enough, I'm not going to be okay. You know, these deep conditioned subconscious narratives. That's what I help people to break out of. Then now you have a lot more freedom and choice. So just that subtle edit to what you said.
I think that's so deep what you just said, because it also made me understand why people act certain ways.
Yeah.
And to be honest, I was not aware of that. And it makes so much sense. Of course, it's like learning a new language.
Yeah,
you can't say, well, you speak German or you speak English, it's your choice. Yeah, well, but if you haven't learned the language,
bingo.
You don't really have the choice of speaking it. And it's just the same of like with your thoughts. You have to go to learn that.
Yeah.
And that it's like that is really deep, and just kind of like in a way opened my eyes in order to understand why some people think, I'm sure a lot of people listening to that will open their eyes too, because that's not something that you just hear regularly. That's very deep, very deep.
Well, good. Well, thank you for taking it so graciously. It's always whenever I'm with a host, I never want to say anything that might sort of counter what you're saying. You're such
everything. Please correct me as much as you can, because I'm learning from this. I'm profiting with everything, and I love to learn and I love to improve. And I think this was just the most brilliant explanation of why certain people you don't have sounds like a choice, but you don't have the choice if you don't know how.
Exactly, and that's why I say it's figurative. Really, it's like it's not a literal choice. And this is why I'm very passionate about what I do, because I've seen that even when I was younger, there was an assumption that, well, why is somebody smoking, or why does someone have a drinking problem? Why don't they just quit? You know, because to us, it might seem like it's very simple. Or why don't you, to whatever you were saying, just focus on the positive of your day? What was good? You know, well, because that's not how they're fucking wired. You know, so it's like then brings in a lot more of that compassion to realize, again, I use quotes, right? And I say there's the language we use and there's the language that uses us. And if you really understand that, it's very powerful. So the language, obviously, we're using, courtesy of the fact that you speak English, because my German sucks, but, is that we're using English, right? But the language that uses us is this deep subconscious narrative. So until you mine into those deep recesses of your subconscious, you don't know why you have a bad habit. You don't know why you tend to attract a bad partner. You don't know why you can't keep a job, or you can't keep money, or you don't know why you tend towards a sickness. And that's where the compassion comes in. And so the power of at least my work and people who do similar things is to bring awareness to that which we're oblivious to. Carl Jung, one of the greatest psychologists of all time, he had a beautiful quote. He said, until the unconscious is made conscious, it will drive your life and you'll call it fate. Right. So until the unconscious is made conscious, awareness, like my work, it will drive your life, the patterns that you're oblivious to that are created in your conditioning, and you'll just call it fate. Right. That's where you're a victim of circumstance, not realizing actually it's because of your deep conditioning that you're making these, choices that create the things you say you don't want. And until you go to the deep programming, undo it or dissolve it, then you keep manifesting the same thing over and over. So that's when you really see that pattern, to your point earlier, it's like very deep, but that's the power of like bringing the unconscious to the forefront, and then you can be responsible for it. Otherwise you will be a victim of circumstance, which actually, to go deeper again, you're not a victim of circumstance, you're a victim of perspective. And so
exactly.
And when you get
the victim of your own perspective, which is like the joke of it all, the victim of your own perspective. Yeah. And that is what creates then in turn call it fate, but your reality.
Yes, exactly.
So so if you just out of curiosity, obviously this varies from person to person, but how would you open somebody? How would you open somebody to like unlock this?
Yeah.
To get in there, to like disprogram that mindset, right? Like how could you turn somebody from like looking only at the negative things, because that's the way they got programmed, or that's the way they learned, that's their language they speak, as we said earlier as an example. How do you teach them the language of positivity?
I mean, great question. That's my gift, I guess. Like, 2 nights ago at my live event, I had a few people that I work with in the crowd. That's why I love what I get to do, because they were intelligent human beings. They showed up, they drove, they paid for a ticket. Like there's things they're capable of doing, but they didn't know why. Like one woman is a singer, a big singer and an announcer for a very big organization that's global. And, she's scared that she's losing her voice and that she gets really anxious and nervous and it's starting to impact her health. And, I was helping her trace that back to a very young age. And then this other woman was saying, I want to attract abundance, right? And so that sounds great, right? Like, so even there's 220 something people in the audience. And I turned around and I said, who here would also like to create or attract abundance? Everyone puts their hand up, right? And you know me, I mean, you know me a little bit now, and I like to use a lot of humor. And I said, and that's why you're all fucked, right? Because
by saying you want to attract it, you already failed.
You're saying you don't have it, right? Because what I help them see, to your point, is that the woman who's trying to attract abundance is actually reinforcing her own scarcity. And that went back to when she was very young, and she told the story about how her dad's way of expressing love, his love language, was just to give her money or buy her things. But as a kid, even though on the surface that may look great, actually to a kid, what she wanted, like any child, is to be loved and accepted, to be seen, to be heard, to be held. These are the things that a being really wants, right? And so for her, what that created in the language that uses her conditioning, is what we discerned, because I take it down to these deep narratives, is that she's not important enough for, in this case, her dad's real love, right?
Yeah.
And that was her story. So she's living in the prison called I'm not important enough, or I'm not worthy. And so then she's now created a life that has to reflect that, of course. So she struggles with her finances. So then, because she does spiritual work and Reiki and all of the things, she's like, well, I want to attract abundance. No, I said, you can't attract abundance, because abundance is. Abundance is. That's the nature of life. Life is abundant. What we do is we remove the story about you that you're not important or that you're not worthy, that's in the way of the abundance that's already there. And everybody's like, whoa, like, because, everybody thought they wanted to attract abundance. I'm like, no, your nature as a being is abundance. Your nature as a being is freedom. Your nature as a being is love. But we look for all of those things outside of us, but it's not out there. And that's the big game of life, right? Is that we're so seduced and tempted by the externals, but really the external is a reflection of our inner world. So if we want to manifest, that word that people use all the time and misunderstand, but we are manifesting all the time, because our energy creates our thoughts, our feelings, our actions, and then the results. So that's manifestation. If you don't like what's being seen in the manifest world, you have to change your relationship to yourself, so you have different thoughts, feelings, actions, and then results. And that's how you change it. I mean, and
that's how you get
come to one of my live events or join my freedom membership, and then you can go to these deeper recesses.
Exactly. What I thought was so amazing when we connected first, what I realized immediately is like, I think we both have, or like similar thoughts on a lot of things, but you find the words for it. I might like kind of think of that, and it's like in my mind and it's clear to me, but I could never bring it to someone else. Right. You have that incredible talent to find the right words so that everybody understands you. Everybody understands those thoughts. And I think that is your biggest gift, to make everybody understand how to like get into your mind, how to do that. And that's why you're so successful with doing what you do, obviously. And that's why you're here today.
Yeah, well, thank you.
Finding the words that most of us can't, right? Yeah. And that's incredible. And it opens up your mind. You're like, that's exactly what I mean the entire time, but I just couldn't find the words for it. And here you come. Peter Crone, immediately have the headline.
It's so funny because a very dear friend of mine, she just literally this morning was leaving me a beautiful voice memo and says, you know what, you're like a better version of ChatGPT, because when I want to say something, I try and get it to say it, but then when I ask you and you phrase it perfectly. I mean, even this very wealthy, well-to-do client of mine, he called me literally on my way driving here, and he's like, Peter Crone, I just had a question, someone I worked with before, and he's there with his partner, and he's like, I got this situation and I know that you'll have the answer. And I completely rephrased it to him. And he's like, see, I knew it. And that just completely changes everything. So yeah, for whatever reason that I feel very blessed and fulfilled to be able to do this, but I'm able to articulate some things that are quite esoteric or profound and make them palatable for people. And it seems to be fortunately changing a lot of lives, which is very satisfying.
Yeah. So I see you talk a lot about the being. And you leave out the human. And I know that you do that on purpose. Yeah. And maybe we want to talk about that, because I think that is also one thing that is very deep. The human being. Yeah. And I'm pausing in between, right? Human being.
Yeah. Yeah. And then, I touched on it, my membership freedom, which is my low-hanging fruit. I try and make it very accessible for people just as a monthly membership where I've got 100 plus hours of all of this stuff to help people free their mind. But I do a 3-month mastermind, which is much more of a deep dive where I actually run the whole 30 hours of the 3 months. And we start with the distinction, human being or being human. And it's like, if you look at the human being, it's sort of like this fixed object, which is how most people relate to themselves. But if you understand both the psychology, the physiology of what it is to be human, we're never the same, ever. Like even in the course of whatever 30, 40 minutes that we've been chatting, our heart beats, our hair grows, our skin is changing, the nails grow, however imperceptible. It's like really everything is in constant flux. So when you understand that actually we're a constant work in progress, like I use the expression, we're all masterpieces, but works in progress. So that gives people this feeling of being more dynamic versus static. And I think where people get stuck, and especially when people age or get sick, is that they see themselves as a static human being versus being human as an invitation. How are you being human? To your point earlier, are you being positive? Are you being negative? Are you being in this world of possibility? Are you being depressed? Are you being excited? And so for me, I look at the being that really represents the life force that we are, and the human as the equipment. In this mastermind I do for 3 months, I talk about the human is the brain and the body, right? It's this 3-dimensional carbon meat suit that I call it, right? Like this is the vehicle that allows us to interface. So you and I can meet, albeit virtually, or whenever we meet people in life. This is how we interface with life, and we need the equipment. But the essence of who we are, the being, is consciousness itself. It's maybe a little bit of a dark image, but if someone were to stab me in the arm or the leg, like it wouldn't hit me. Like it doesn't hit the being, right? And so I teach people to distinguish between the equipment and then the life force that animates the equipment. And most people are misidentified with the equipment. Oh, I'm this age, or I'm this weight, or I'm fat, or I'm ugly, or, you're collapsing pure possibility, timeless, boundless, limitless being with a very finite, limited piece of equipment. And if you do that, you're always going to suffer. So that's why I like to distinguish the two. Is yes, we need the human form. I love my human body. I take impeccable care of it. I'm always inspired by people who do the same, like you, who are, drawn to health and wellness, because to me, it's not only that, okay, great, people look better in a nice body, but it's a reflection of how you value yourself, right? Which is really...
Yeah, it's like the value you put on yourself.
Exactly.
Kind of like the respect you show up for the space where you gifted from the universe to the being, for the being to live in, right?
Yes.
For the being to be.
Absolutely. This is our home,
Yeah.
Albeit the home is kind of unique because, and even a house, right? There's never the same house. Okay, the bricks and the foundation and the windows, they don't move, but there's movement in the house, right? So if you think of this
Everybody decorates it a different way.
Yeah, you move things around, the trash, and you cook and there's different scents and, stuff happens in laundry. There's always movement. Well, the same in our body, right? Like even as we eat, the process of like ingestion, right? Chewing, then the digestion of the stomach, then it goes through the small intestines and then it goes into the colon and then we absorb and then it goes through the liver and in the blood and then it gets metabolized at the cellular level. Like even after you eat for days, your body is alchemizing an apple and eventually making it a skin cell. I mean, it's magic, right? If you really understand it, it's so beautiful. And so to take care of this temple, to me, is a reflection of the degree to which we revere our own existence, right? And we see this, unfortunately, when people don't have the best view of themselves, they do tend towards self-destructing behaviors, whether it be, alcoholism or drugs or medication that perhaps they don't really need. That's a whole different slippery subject. But so that's where, for me, the human and the being helps people to lean a little bit more into the being, the soul, the spirit, and become a little less attached to attached to or defined by the physicality, right? That misidentification with form. And this is, again, no one knows who it is, but this client was worried a little bit about money, even though he does very well, and going through a separation and, worrying about giving away half of the money. I said, no. You miss the complete point. Your resources have got nothing to do with your resourcefulness. I said, you are the source of your wealth, not your bank account. And it completely changed everything. He's like, holy shit. I said, actually, the fear that you might have of giving away some of your resources, which is in already form, is what's actually limiting your capacity to tap into your resourcefulness. Does that make sense? So he was just blown away. He's like, holy shit. Yeah. So that's
totally
long-winded answer to your question. But yes, definitely lean into the being, not the human. And the human's beautiful and we want to take care of it because that's our ride, right? It's just like a car. If you don't take care of your car and you don't change the oil, put in good gas, you don't clean it, then, your drive is going to be more uncomfortable.
Going to be a bumpy drive.
Exactly. Yeah.
We want to have a smooth drive.
Yes.
But like I think what is also a beautiful example for describing the being or the soul, it's like you introduce yourself as a 5-year-old child as I am Peter, right?
Yeah.
But now you introduce yourself again, I am Peter.
Yeah.
It's definitely not the same Peter. Complete different Peter, right? Looks different, acts different, has different thoughts. The mind has changed.
Yeah.
You have much more knowledge than the 5-year-old, which is beautiful, which is great, right? But what stays the same? Why do you still introduce yourself as I am, right? The I am, it's your soul. It's the being. The being
good news
always changed the same. It is just the human that has changed. And that is I think that's a great understanding of like, what is the soul? What is the being? Versus what is the human, right?
And all spiritual, really true, authentic spiritual teachings will always come back to that I am as the root of everything, right? I am. Yeah. Meaning it points to the knowing that I'm here, that consciousness exists, right? But then anything we put after that, if someone says, I am fat, well, that's not a truth, I am depressed. That's not a truth. It's how you feel, and even
so your being can't even be that.
No.
Because your soul can't be like fat. Your soul can't be like your soul can't be like you can be wealthy, but in a different kind of wealth, not your bank account, as you said earlier.
Correct. Yeah.
You're like the wealth that is towards your being is a complete different. Well, it has nothing to do with your bank account, completely nothing. But that is the ultimate wealth that we're speaking about, right? Absolutely. The wealth that you would say like, I am wealthy, but speaking about
your
the
true
being,
essence.
your soul that is wealthy. Yeah. Well, that's the ultimate wealth. Wealth in the whole. And that's like what it's all about, right? We're all trying to touch that I am. We're all trying to touch that being, trying to make our being happy. Yeah. And that's like our journey, our like when people sit down, meditate for, 20 days and straight. And I don't know, they're like, it's amazing what people achieve, right? In order to get to our soul. Mm-hmm. That's what's the journey about. And I feel like when you work with people, you start to understand, you start to get closer to your soul. You start to make those steps. You start to like understand what is the difference between my being and my human?
Yeah.
What's holding me back is the human and not the being.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's why you may have heard me say it before, but one of my catchphrases is that's why I say I don't solve problems, I dissolve them.
Yes.
Right? Because
yes.
solving problems belongs to the human.
You dissolve them.
Yeah.
But
like
it's
magic.
true.
Yeah.
It is true because it is only in your mind. It's
Yeah.
only what's in your mind. And then
Yeah.
the being doesn't have much problems.
Yeah.
The being is just there.
And that's
observing,
why it's
happy,
such a
and,
great game being human, because it's so elusive, it's so slippery, it's so insidious, right? So even what you said, like I'm trying to touch that, like we want to have that experience, but the wanting is the human. I am that.
Yeah.
I don't need to touch. I am joy. I am worth. I am freedom. I am love. I am abundance. I don't need to try and get it. Right. And so that's why with this woman at my live event says, I want to attract abundance. I'm like, that's the problem, because you don't get that you are abundance.
Yeah,
once you get that, then there's nothing more to attract. Then life starts to reconfigure itself around you from that energy. Okay, it might not be instantaneous, but sometimes it is. I mean, I literally have had moments where within 15 seconds of a revelation, life just suddenly showed me something. That's entanglement, right? That's where time and space collapse.
That's where we get into quantum physics.
Yeah. And as soon as I shift energetically, then the universe is like, it'll meet you right there. Versus the human, which is a very linear progression, where if I work a little harder, if I lose a little weight, I'll hopefully meet someone one day and then I'll get a better job. And, it's exhausting. It's like playing with this like heavy, dense material. But energetically, it can be instantaneously when you really let go of, because it is a dissolution, not a solution. You let go of that's which we've been holding on to. Like I was just saying with this client of mine, he wasn't worried about giving up some of his money. It was actually letting go of the fear that he can't just make as much as he wants whenever he wants. And he's like, holy shit. Like, I'm like, yeah, you can give away half and make 10 times that in the next 6 months if you want. He's like, shit. Right? Yeah. So that's a totally different, that's a totally different perspective though. And that's where we tap into our true nature, our being that is timeless, limitless, boundless, not this limited form. Yes, if we're identified with the human meat suit, then everything is going to be like lethargic and heavy and slow. And we're going to be looking for everything outside of us. But if you go, no, hang on a minute, life is a mirror. It's a reflection of the essence of who I am. If I'm looking through a lens that is based in, these constraints, then of course everything's going to seem constrained, right? Because that's the way I'm looking. But if I'm looking from, I am sheer abundance, I am pure love itself, then that's what's going to start to be reflected in my life effortlessly. Not because I have to, or I want to, or I try. It's just, when in the morning you get up and you look in the mirror, you don't see like this 6 foot, dude with dark hair, right? That would be weird.
I was like, where is he going right now?
Yeah, exactly. People worry about that with me sometimes. That would be weird. Like, that's not a reflection.
Hold on, did I change?
You make a very attractive 6 foot dude with dark hair. So like that's not what you see. So the same as a mirror, which represents to me the essence of the dimensions of time and space, we get the reflection of whatever energy that we predominantly occupy. So if you don't like what you see in the mirror, that is now your life, then the opportunity, it's not like your fault, but the opportunity is to shift the essence of who we are, which then eventually, sometimes instantaneously, will create a different image in the mirror.
Yeah, but I also think what you said earlier, to come back to the human being, it is, a lot of people are trying to tend to be like, okay, we just want to be super spiritual. I want to be only the being. And I think like we have to accept that we are human being.
Yes.
We have to accept that there is the balance between those two. If you accept that you are a human, you can't put your ego away. Yeah. Like as much as we all want to talk about like, oh, I'm egoless. No, you don't, because you're human and you have an ego. It is just how it is. Yeah. And I think like when it comes to really being a spiritual person is when you understand that there are certain things that you might do in order to make your human happy That might be, get the promotion, work hard, achieve certain social status or whatever it might be.
Yeah.
But in the other hand side, you're also able to touch into your being, into your true soul. Like what is it that makes my true soul that what is it, the true just happiness is when you're just you're here, you're there, you're everything, you are, and when you understand that and you get in touch with that and you understand that you're enough, you are perfect, right? In the definition of perfect, because that is there is no perfection, right?
No,
obviously,
exactly.
But using the wrong word here, but
no, it's okay.
You get what I'm saying. You get what I'm saying, right? And I think the mind shifting thing is actually when we accept the human being together.
Yeah.
I love how you make people understand that difference and make them also understand that you are both, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's one of the clips that just reminds me of a live event I did last month. This girl, she's a coach, very smart, very beautiful, really committed to helping. But she wanted, her question in the live event was how could you help me improve my business, right? But it was nothing to do with that. It was actually deep underneath it. What I could feel is that she's constantly thinking there's something wrong with her that she's trying to improve. She was just about to sign up for this program. It's $12,000 and da-da-da. And it stemmed from when she was young, her dad said to her that she was going to grow up like her mom and sister to be a loser, right? And so when you hear that, it's really impactful and harsh, right? That's a trauma to a kid. And so what she realized is she's human, being a coach, trying to help humans, but desperately energetically trying not to show her humanity because she doesn't want to show there's something wrong with her. So, when I'm able to help people see, okay, there's nothing wrong with you, but there's a beauty in both not becoming, as I said, identified with the form, but really loving and embracing the form, right? So it's making space for our humanity whilst understanding that we are spiritual beings at the deepest level. But the only way that we actually get to ironically know that is because we need the human equipment to discern it. Does that make sense? It's this is a much more profound subject and it gets pretty heavy, but consciousness as a single entity, consciousness as unity doesn't have an experience because oneness can't know itself. So for me, the whole purpose of the diversity of humanity and why relationships are normally the number one topic of conversation is because it's through the diversity of humans and through the splitting, the illusion of separation of consciousness, that we get to have relativity or relationship to relate to another so that we can see through one another. Namaste, the divine in me sees the divine in you, which is really consciousness recognizing itself. So it's beautiful if you understand it. Yes, we are divine. And yes, I've met the whole spiritual people who ignore their humanity, but then they can't pay their rent and they get sick. And, it's you want to be able to do both. And for me, I often say, you're talking about me being a 5-year-old and saying, hi, I'm Peter. My expression is that I want to have the mind of a wise old sage, the body of a young 20-year-old athlete, but the heart of a child, and that's how I live my life, and that's where I embrace all sides, right? I'm a animated, timeless, boundless being. And that's what people find really attractive and they enjoy my presence. But I also take care of my equipment and I like to be inspired by people who do the same and that we nurture not just ourselves, our loved ones, the homes we live in, our planet. We take care of our gardens. It's both are imperative to the overarching theme of the experience of being alive. And so to honor both and include both is imperative. Yeah.
Exactly. So I love that about your work, that you don't exclude one, because there is a lot of people that tend to you have to set that aside and you have to only focus on, but in today's society, we are human beings. And that is also the only way I would say to live a healthy life in every sense, what health means, right? The physical, mental health, everything. You have to take care of both human and the being. So combining that together. Another thing I really, really wanted to talk with you today about is the true meaning of love. So I mean, a lot of people will think now we're going to start to talk about relationships and whatever, but I would love to talk about the love that comes beyond relationships, the true love that,
Yeah, it's a beautiful topic. I don't know a human being who isn't at some point, hopefully many, touched by love, whether it's they fall in love or, they become a parent and they have unconditional love. I think there's different forms of love. It's funny that in the English language, we just seem to have that one word, love, right? But I know in many other languages, I think in Sanskrit, I think there's 92 words for love. And I think in Greek, I think there's 38, and so it's really beautiful when you understand that there are different expressions of it. So I think if right now a parent is listening to me, there's that familial love, which is almost sacrificial, right? Like what wouldn't a mother do, hopefully, for their child, right? Which is a form of love, but we could say, to me, the deeper form of love, it includes that, but it's insufficient to just be completely unconditional towards another, because then you're denying yourself, right? We see many parents lose themselves through the process of raising a child. It looks great, but that I wouldn't say is complete love, because if you're denying yourself, then there's an abandonment. That's not love either. Then we can talk about romantic love, right? Where somebody falls in love with somebody, but that also tends to be a space where people compromise themselves. So, they talk about, marriage, you have to make sacrifices. And again, I feel that that's an abandonment too of self, right? Where we become who we think we should in order to keep the other person happy, or just to keep them because we're scared of loss, right? So albeit that's a beautiful form of love, and I'm a hopeless romantic. I love companionship, but that equally is not, to me, true love, because that's more possession. That's more codependency, right? So many people may never have heard this definition of love, because I like to be a little bit unique. But to me, true love is anything that helps you to transcend the constraints with which you arrived, so that you become more true to the essence of the soul that you are. So that, to me, is true love. True love is anything that helps you to be reminded of the essence of your true nature of being timeless, boundless, limitless, that your essence is freedom, it is love itself, and is possibility. That for me is the most beautiful expression of love, is that even in the face of, and we have it as these cliches of like, if you love someone, set them free. And it looks like, okay, if you really love someone, then don't possess, don't hold. Most relationships, as I said, are based on dependency, attachment, possession. And there's a very big difference between love and possession that a lot of people don't understand. They collapse it. Like, well, you're my wife, or you're my girlfriend, or you're my husband, and you're supposed to do this. No, that's domination. That's demanding. That's at some levels abuse. So, but real love is if you can recognize the light in another, and that even if, for example, I've done this a couple of times with partners, that knowing, even recently, somebody who I love dearly, but I knew that the next evolution for her and for me was for us to be single, because there were things for us both to look at, to focus on, because in the beauty of the relationship, we had, quote unquote, collapsed a little bit into the relationship and lost ourselves subtly. Not bad. It's a beautiful relationship, someone I love dearly and always will. But, that to me was an expression of love. It's a spiritual love. It's almost like this, whether you call it twin flame or some sort of soul contract, where there are certain people that we meet and we align with who may even be the biggest pain in our asses, but they're there because they're helping to alchemize and bring to the surface, trigger something that we're here to transcend. And that's a form of love. Anything that helps us evolve into this sort of spiritual ascension that gets us beyond the limitations of our mind, to me, is an expression of love. And we collapse love with form. We collapse wealth with form, right? Just my client, he thought his wealth was in his bank account. No, that is a reflection of who you've been. Your real wealth is the source of who you are as a being. So I would say love is our nature, and the degree to which we don't have to be attached to anything or anyone, but rather are a stand for everybody discovering that same level of love and freedom inside of themselves. That, to me, is an expression of true love.
And where would you like, for example, if most of the people have a limited mindset of love and thinking, okay, the love that I have to my pet, the love that I have to my mom and dad and my partner. Yeah. That's it. That's love, right? Yeah. So how would you make somebody understand that love that you carry within yourself, that love that you would like have in any moment, right? Like even if you lost all of those people or, you know, your pets, like if all of them would be gone, you're still being loved and you still have love, right? Like how would you explain that to a person?
Well, the best way is just to go to my Instagram, and because
just scroll a little bit, and you'll get it.
Scroll down a little bit, you'll see. Actually, no, if you go to my reels, it's the number one reel. Like I think it's close to 7 million views because this is a very powerful and touching topic.
Okay, you guys, so Closer Podcast, you know where to go.
Thanks very much for attending my TED Talk. And goodbye. No, because I worked with someone in a live event. It was very moving, and she was actually, it was so nice. She was there at the one 2 days ago on Thursday. This is now, I think, 3 months after, and we were all laughing. I'm like, how does it feel to know that your story has been viewed by 7 million people out there, and the fact that she was attached to someone in her 20s and she thought that was love? And so I was, to answer your question and equally address what the video speaks to, is I said, it wasn't that she was in love with him, but to me, true love isn't necessarily about the other person. Of course, they're part of it. We don't want to dismiss the other person, but rather it's who the other person inspires us to be. It's who we get to be in the presence of, you know, with and through that person, right? So ultimately, others, as I was saying earlier, the energy of relativity and relationship is the conduit, is the catalyst by which we get to discover our true nature. It could be a pet, it could be a parent, it could be a lover, it could be just someone at work who you get along really well with. Whoever in the outside world is the means of inspiration to turn on the experience of energy in us is the catalyst, but not the source, right? So it's not that my love is over there with that person, but that person inspires the love within me that is my nature. And that's why if you get that, then holy shit.
That kind of switch in your mind that your love isn't stuck with someone else. No. The love is within you. That person might trigger the love that you carry within yourself.
They could be even the inspiration for a new level of love that you never had before, for which we want to honor and be grateful for that person. But even when people experience grief, you know, they're like, oh, I'm so sorry for your loss. And again, because I tend to like to flip things upside down, as you know, I'm like, well, yes, I could be sorry for your loss, or I could be grateful for your gain, right? If you felt sad because you lost someone or something or love, then that in the world of duality means you also had to have found something. My dad died when I was 17, right? Yeah. And people are like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. That's terrible. I'm like, wait a minute. My dad told me pretty much every day that he loved me, and not just the words, but the energy, the expression, the way he held me, the way he played, you know, the way he teased me, the way he helped me to learn to ski or to play soccer, or, you know, the amount of love he put into my life. So I can then talk to a friend who's got a father who's still alive, who he's had for 70 years, 70, but never had that experience. So am I the one who's to be sorry for? Or do you know what I mean? So it's all about the quality of experience. And so for me, like understanding that on the flip side too, if someone pisses you off and you get angry, they're not creating that anger, you are. Right. And so this is all an opportunity. Life is the opportunity, as one of my quotes say, life will present you with people and circumstances to reveal where you're not free. And when you really get that, this whole paradigm, this dimension of what it is to be alive and to be human is the opportunity to discover who we are at the deepest level. And for me, in the absence of all fear, then we are left with just love. And I hope people, you know, I remember when I first started my work a few years ago, people came to a workshop and they're like, dude, like, I love your peace and you're so happy and you're so free and you just seem to have an amazing life. How do I get there? And I said, well, you know, the way I got there is I fell head over heels in love with someone. They left me and I fell apart. So I wish the same for you.
It sounds so miserable, but in the same time, it sounds so great, right? Like, because what you've profit out of it. Yeah. And I heard you talking about it. That was many years ago, but like that teaches you a lot. And I think it is because falling in love with someone so deeply, it triggers the love that you carry within yourself. Yeah. And that is like, it's like, so I don't do drugs, right? Like I don't even drink alcohol. I'm a very, let's say, boring person in that way. But like it's because of the self-respect that I have towards my human, right? The body that I'm living in. So I don't, all right. But then I always think like, all right, if I don't do drugs, I want to have something, right? Something that gives me that high. And what is that? Love.
Yeah.
Right. So love is my drug.
Yeah.
So is it maybe my partner that is like my high, that gives me my, is that my drug? But that's exactly where we limit our thoughts and where we're like being stuck and like being like getting scared of like losing that person. No, it's not. It is that person at that moment triggers something that is within me. I carry it within me. I can never lose it because it's right here. It's like inside me.
Yeah.
So a lot of people then also run to like replacing that person, right? If somebody loses, we've seen everybody reacts different, but like some people like cry, want that person back. Other people like, I mean, if a relationship fails, I'm saying like if out of any reason, right? People run back to the person, want the person back, or some people run immediately to the next one. You see it. It's like like literally 2 days later they have a new boyfriend or like new girlfriend, right? And you're like, what? Wait, well, how? And it's just like they're trying to replace that. Yeah. But what they try to replace is somebody else who triggers something that is within yourself, like what you carry within yourself. And when it comes to the magic, it's like when you can trigger it yourself, right? When you are able to make yourself feel love, when you are the person that can trigger that out. I mean, that's not easy for sure. No. And I think it's beautiful that I think when we get to that state, the most beautiful thing that we could do is like understanding that, so that you don't live in that fear of losing someone that triggers that love that you carry within yourself. But in the same time, it is beautiful if we can experience it from the outside, triggering what is in us, but also knowing you can switch that button yourself.
Absolutely.
And you can. Like, I'm sure there's like, how would you go through life otherwise, right? Like, we're all at one point sadly going to go through losses. Yeah. But that's exactly where you come in. The point of like how you view when you lost your parents, how you've overcome that. Yeah. And it's just beautiful because you understood that it wasn't only, of course it is very tragic, but it wasn't only tragic, right?
No, it's part of, for whatever reasons, it's part of our agreement, even the three of us, my mum, my dad, and me, at a level that I don't understand consciously as a human, that's their journey, right? And that's where, people say, oh, they died too soon. I'm like, the statement doesn't make sense, right? Like they died when they died, right? Like who, I didn't get the memo that you're in charge of the universe and that you know when people should die. Like, where is that? Where's that email? I wasn't on that chain, So it's like,
you and me.
It's great to know, like, how you are apparently aware of how everything should unfold, and so that's where the humility comes in, right? It's like, okay, yes, of course.
I mean, they mean well, right? Like by saying those words. Of course,
like, it's just way that
mean well. Yes,
we're being polite, but it's the audacity of the ego that it thinks it knows how life should be and how other people should act. If you really understand, when people have judgment or criticism, it's like, oh, like, how so-and-so should behave in the office, or that somebody should quit smoking cigarettes. Like, you don't know what they've been through. Like, it's like I had somebody who'd been smoking cigarettes for years in my mastermind. She was at my live event two nights ago. She was smoking a pack a day. You don't think she was trying to quit? She didn't know why, because of the language it uses her, that underneath it, she thought she was bad. That was what she never thought that. She just thought she's smoking and she's, doesn't want to. But until she got rid of that deep code, that program that from a very young age and the way she was related to as a kid, that she was bad, well, then it makes sense that her badness was suffering from which she found relief in nicotine. But as soon as she saw that was not a truth, then boom, that's gone. So now she has the choice to go back to this literal or figurative choice we talked about earlier. And she hasn't touched a cigarette since. It's amazing.
Wow,
but if I or anyone judged her for smoking, guess what that would do? Reinforce the fact that she's bad and doing something wrong, which then only exacerbates it. Do you see? So that's where we want to have more compassion. So yes, to be able to recognize that life is a crazy, at times fucked up journey, and people go through some pretty horrific things, but I do trust that life knows way better than any of us what it's doing, and that everybody's got the canvas of circumstances they need for their own evolution. If you really get that, we're on one planet, but there are as many worlds as there are minds because you live in your own world. And if you can learn from the things that life presents you to discover, as we said, true love, the essence of who you are beyond your own limitations, then you're going to play a pretty good game here. And that's what I'm committed to helping people discover.
Yeah, exactly. And that's where we also come back how we kind of like started the podcast, right? Like we as the mindset, we are creating those universes and like having understanding for everyone's kind of point of view.
Yeah.
I feel like we all trying to just do our best out there.
Yeah.
And like
truly.
And especially you as like helping so many people, which is really amazing.
Yeah.
So I guess do you want to add anything?
No, I think we've covered a lot there. There's probably a lot for people to chew on. It's been a beautiful
Right.
conversation. And as I said, if people are interested in learning more, I touched on it, then my easiest offering that people are loving is my monthly membership of freedom, because I want people to find freedom in all areas of their life, financial freedom, relationship freedom, freedom of health. And so that's where people can find me, or on my Instagram at Peter Crone. And if people want to do a deeper dive, they can do my 3-month mastermind, which is so fun. But no, it's been beautiful. It's always nice to meet kindred spirits who are committed to living a great life and making a difference. And I appreciate through podcasts like yours that I get to reach, more people and hopefully help make the world a happier, freer, more loving place.
Exactly. That's the mission.
Yeah.
Creating healthy, wealthy mindset states.
Yeah.
All of that. Exactly. That is your work. Well, thank you so much for being here today, and thank you for your time. And I've learned a lot actually by doing that podcast with you. And I love talking to you every time. So that's great.
Yeah. To be continued. As I said, we're all masterpieces and works in progress, myself included. So we will continue to help and inspire each other.
Every day we grow, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Peter.
Thanks, Maren. Lovely to be with you.
Thank you for listening to Health Hacks. I hope today's episode gave you more knowledge to improve your health.